Okay, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for coming to our next Learn Fast webinar series topic, which today is going to be split reports. And we're going to talk a little bit about in detail of them and just a couple things to maybe get things going the right direction here. We're going to have questions and answers like we always have. Go ahead and throw those into the question and answer panel. You have a button there on your screen to add those in. Try to keep them focused on split reports, or if you have something else that's going to be there, you can go ahead and put them in there at some level, but they may or may not answer them. We'll try to get to them after the webinar. So, but if you have questions about split reports, make sure you ask them in the questions and answers box. Okay. We'll start off with a with a poll while we're going through some quick introductions of what are the devices that you have that you're using, your AIM devices. Go ahead and answer that real quickly. And by the way, these are all anonymous, just so you know. And you can pick on this particular one. You can pick multiple choices as well. So let's jump into. Oops. Let's save. Let's share RayStudio. Let's do some quick introductions around. We've got a couple of people that are here joining us, helping us talk about split reports here today. Robbie, you've been working with AIM quite a bit. Have been here to offer all of our webinars so far. Tell us a little bit about you and what you're going to do here today.
Well, today I'm really here to make sure that questions and answers get out to as many people as we possibly can, sitting in front of all of these eager learning people. I'm just here to help. So get those questions and answers, and hopefully we can get a little bit more on the live coverage. So if they're on topic, we'll be happy to answer them live for you guys.
Perfect. Cameron, what about you?
Well, I mean, basically be the exact same thing as Robbie. We will be we'll be answering all the questions, and if anybody has anything that maybe is a little off topic, we'd be happy to help you. We can either give your email addresses at the end, or however you want to handle it. But happy to help, and if everybody has a good time.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to start this up. I should have been already started up with this. Click here to join. Okay. What we're going to start with is a couple of things just to show you what kind of RayStudio looks like. There's a problem that we have occasionally, that we run into occasionally, which is when you open up RayStudio and let's say you do not have a track map that is built and ready to go, which the split report uses. It's one of the functions that is being used by the split report. When you go to push and go to click on the split times analysis or the split report icon, if you look up here in the let me make sure that's annotating correctly. Let me get my little spotlight tool. There you go. When you look up here, there's some icons that are grayed out, and I get this question a lot as we do some of these different functions, and split reports is one of the ones that we get this on. The track map, the track replay, a couple of these other functions, including the split report, and even the show track map icon over here on the right they're grayed out, which means that the function we're about to talk about today, the split reports, if you don't have a track map built, the icon's not going to be available to you. So if you see that, and the other kind of another tip that you don't have a track map attached to your particular data is there is no bar across the top here with the three different colors typically for track maps. There's red segments, blue segments, and green segments. And if that's not across the top and you don't see these icons with any color to them, these grayed out icons, it's because you don't have a track map attached. So there's a couple of different ways. We'll briefly go through it. I'm not going to build a track map, but I'm going to show you something that a number of people don't use very often, which is using the map manager and loading a previous track map that you might have already built that you've saved. And so in order to load that track map, you can, or build a new one, you'd come up to the map icon. Map pull down menu, and you have a couple of choices. Of course, the show track map icon is grayed out because we don't have one that's attached to this test. So we only have a couple choices. We have new, where you would come in and you would build a new track map for this particular data set. If you don't have one already built, you go through those steps. There's a couple of really good YouTube videos out there, and track mapping will be a webinar in the near future as well. I'm going to cancel out of that and show you another way of coming in here. And the map manager, this is one that a lot of people don't use all that often. So if you come into the map manager, you have all of the track maps that you have built in the past. They're all stored in a folder, ready to reload. And it's one of the things we're going to talk a little bit about split reports today. So the power of multiple maps and doing different things, and of course we'll store some different things in profiles as well here. But in this particular case, I've got an Autobahn track map that I've built in the past, and you can see I've got 3 different ones. We're going to apply these different ones and see what it does to split reports, and give you even a little bit more power for split reports. So I'm going to highlight the Autobahn 1 main track map in my folder, and I'm going to load it for open tests. And what you see happen there real quickly, you notice that we've got this colored bar across the top. And that is showing the splits of the actual track map. I'm going to turn the track map on. It's now grayed. It's not grayed out anymore. So, here's the start finish line at Autobahn, and then you can see there's a little green segment as it goes. In fact, let me just make that a little bit bigger so we can all see that even better. You can see that there's a little bit of a green segment here from the start finish line to the braking zone, and that's that green segment right there. And then we've got turn 1, which is right here, this blue segment, and there's that shown on the track map as well. Just a quick overview of these track maps. One of the things that helps you a little bit when you allow Race Studio to build your track maps, generally their default mode is straightaways are green, left-hand turns are blue, right-hand turns are red. So if you look at this track map, you see this red up here for what it's numbered as turn 2. If you come down here, you can see that was a right-hand turn. Right-hand turns are always red, left-hand turns are blue, straightaways are green. That's a bit, we'll see these segments in split reports. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of that as well. Okay. And I seen that question, can we go over how to label corner numbers? It's done automatically by the software, by where you split it or where it automatically splits it, and we'll get into that deeper in a future webinar on track maps in the future. Okay, I'm gonna just put that down here to the bottom. By the way, you can take those track maps and you grab the upper corner with your cursor. You can make them bigger and smaller, and then place them down, out of the way a little bit where they can just kind of sit there and float. Okay. You'll also notice all of the icons now are no longer grayed out, so we can actually see the different functions. So so I've loaded up a track map. So we have a track map attached to our data here real quickly, and then let's open up a split report. Let's take a look at it and see what they look like, right? So when you hover over these icons up here, it'll give you a little bit of a tooltip. Split times analysis. This one's the channel report. One of the things we went over last week, dashboards, simulation, suspension analysis. But let's click on the split time analysis icon. So I clicked on that. I'm going to go ahead and maximize that up just so we can see it with a little bit more clarity. And another thing we did last time, if you remember right, the space bar hides this measures and laps toolbar. And since this has a lot of segments, let's go ahead and push the button there. And we get the split the split report up here as a full screen, which is kind of handy. Okay, so we've now attached this map, remember, and the segment colors that we have here are now matching the amount of time we've spent in each of these segments. We're going to walk basically step by step through this entire report here in just a moment. But one of the first things that you're going to notice, very, very typically, is when you do a split report, some of these numbers are kind of crazy, and the reason is you've got some laps that were not full, at speed, laps. Maybe it was your out lap, maybe there was a yellow flag or two in the middle, things like that, right? And then of course your in lap at the end. And if you look at the lap times over here on the right hand edge, you can see that this lap here was a 440.8 when the best lap was a 240. So that's like a 2 minute longer lap. And then the next one is a minute longer than normal. So these two were the out lap and then the warm up lap before the green flag. And then we have our in lap here with a 450. So what we really want to do in order to get these split reports to give us, valid data when we start to put our best theoretical laps and our best rolling laps and all the statistics of the stuff that we're looking at, we really need to disable those laps. So there's a couple of ways that I like to do that. And one of the ways is leaving this test laps toolbar open down here across the bottom. And if you right click on this lap 2, if I right click on that, I can disable the lap right here. And what you'll see is the split time report will actually just regenerate, and it's taken that one away, right? That lap away. The other way of doing it is to go into the lap manager tab, and then you can highlight any of the laps you want and then hit the disable lap button. So I'll do the other two this way. So that 339 lap that was just before the green flag, and then we have this last lap, and you can push and hold the control key. I'll do the control key and then click on it, and you can highlight just the ones you want. If I wanted to get rid of this one and this one, right? Or you can highlight a lap and then hit the shift key and click, and it does a whole row of them. So in this case, what I really want to do is highlight the lap, hit a control key, and grab the last one. I really want these two to be disabled. So as soon as I do that, there's a couple ways here. We could hit the disable lap button right here, or you could right click and disable lap. It's the AIM software has lots of different ways that you'll get used to, to get to where you want to go. So I'll just hit the disable lap button here, and you'll see those laps will go and disable themselves. And I've got a setting here called view only enabled laps up here at the top. And I have that checked. So if I uncheck that, you'll see all of the laps, the warm-ups, all of the different things, and they'll have a red X through them. I like to just show the laps that I actually want to see. So I like to keep that view only enabled laps button checked, but whatever works for you, okay? So now I've got my laps down to the laps that are actually the true, actually at speed laps. Let's go back to our split report. And keep in mind, as I go through, the previous webinars were the same way, and I didn't make the point of it very well, but I'm going pretty fast, and I understand that. But we're taking these things, and within an hour or so of us doing these videos are going to be up on our YouTube site, which we'll show you the link in just a moment. And so if I go a little bit too fast, don't get too frustrated. We're trying to get as much in here as we can about certain topics, and then you can always go back to the YouTube video later and slow it down, play it back, and say, okay, he talked about that, disabling those laps or viewing the enabled laps only. How did he do that again? So be ready to go out and watch the YouTube video. That's the process we're trying to build here. So, okay, so we've disabled the laps. Now you can see that the lap times that we have here, the 241 through a 241 at the end, and they're all pretty much laps that were at speed, ready to go. And now let's chat about the overall makeup of the let me close that track map of this report. Okay, so what you've got here is you've really got two different halves if you look at it, and there's this upper half, and that's the absolute split times. And what these are is wherever that track map, remember that first little green segment, it is broken up every lap that you have still enabled, and it takes and calculates out the speed or the amount of time you spent in that particular segment for that lap. And so in this case, on lap 4, which was the first green flag lap, the driver spent 2.877 seconds in that first segment. Pardon me. And then 2.6, 2.5, and on down through. And it does that for every segment of the track map that you have attached. Okay. Then the software is going through and highlighting and making it in blue if you use the default colors, is this 2.560 right here. That is the driver's fastest segment time for this run. Okay. It goes through and does that for every segment. So you can see these blue highlighted segment times for each of the different segments. And then of course, those are the fastest ones. Then what the software does is it comes down and stitches all those together in what it calls the theoretical best lap. So it takes that 2.56 up here, pulls it down into this line here, and then runs if you had done your best, put together a lap with your best segment times all the way through the entire thing, you end up with, you could have driven, or you did drive, but it was just breaking up individual segments. The driver in this particular case, a 239.15. Okay, and the driver's best lap actually was a 240.32. Okay, so it's always kind of difficult to you're never going to get there. If you went a little bit faster, your theoreticals would just get faster. So I get that question a lot of what should the difference be between my, if I'm looking for consistency and, you know, and how good a driver is doing out there, is what is the difference between a good difference between a theoretical best lap and the actual driven, you know, best lap. And that's a tough question. The longer the lap, the more segments you have, the bigger that gap gets. But if you're within a second or two, you're probably getting fairly close. If you're up in there, you know, 4 or 5 seconds away, it's your consistency maybe it needs a little bit of improvement. But where you place these segment cuts is also an important part of that. If you put these segments right where you're transitioning from, you know, on throttle to on brake, and on one lap you went, you know, quite a bit farther on the throttle, you went deeper into the corner, well, that really helped that one segment, but it hurt the next segment, right? So if you're creating your own segments, sometimes if you stay away from those transitions between throttle and brake, your best theoretical versus your lap time becomes a little bit more accurate. So keep that in mind as you build your own track maps. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about, of course, now we've got the, you know, all of these 8 or 10 laps here that are showing us all these times. And the next thing that we see is there's a highlighted yellow lap here, right? And let me bring the track map back up so we can look at it just a little bit better, so I can kind of point out what exactly that means. Make that a little bit bigger. What you can see is here, there's right about here, this 4.8 on lap 8, the second half of lap 8, and the first half of lap 9 is highlighted yellow, and it's what we call the best rolling lap. So all of these times that you're seeing over here were the same times you were getting from right here where I've got my cursor, the start finish to start finish, right? That best lap of 240.3 was from this spot around the track and back to here. And you did that lap. It was from start finish. It probably shows up on the timing sheets because we're, you know, we're showing our lap times here basically from the same spot as the official timing. And but sometimes, depending on what form of motorsports you're on, sometimes you have a lot of traffic. It's practice. It's HPDE, you know, racing. Sometimes you don't have a chance to get a good lap from start finish to start finish. This best best rolling lap is the best lap that you actually did, unlike the best theoretical where it was pieces and we stitch them together. This highlighted yellow is the best lap you did all the way from the beginning of segment 8. That's where the yellow line starts, the beginning of segment 8. So if we look right here, it's right there where I put the cursor. It's the clock started there, and then you drove around and right past the start finish line, and the clock stops over here again. So the driver actually did this 239.996 lap time. If somebody were standing over here and lap timing right over here, they would have clicked and they would have got a 239.99. And so you actually did it, which is super valuable to you, but you just didn't do it from start finish to start finish. Okay. That best rolling lap is a cool tool. A lot of people like to use it, especially when there's a lot of traffic. Sometimes you're in a class where maybe you don't want to you know, show your speed in practice or something like that. Maybe you take a couple corners off and you only run a lap from a specific spot back to that same spot. So in your data, you've got what you're actually capable of doing, but your lap times and the printed lap times that everybody gets to see or see online don't show that lap time. So yeah, some people will use it for that as well. So let's see, let me make this a little bit smaller. So in fact, let's just go ahead and close that down for a second. That's kind of this upper half. We've got the blue theoretical bests. I mean, the blue fastest segments. We stitch them all together for the theoretical best lap. We've got a best rolling lap that we've talked about. And that's all up here in this upper part of what we call the absolute split times. The second half of the screen, this bottom half, a lot of people don't use it that much, and whatever works for you, but it's virtually the exact same data, except your best lap, the one that's highlighted red, you'll notice that these are all zeros all the way across the line. And what is happening here is all the rest of these segments, it's just doing you the math. If it's a minus sign, you were faster in that segment than your fastest lap. So you've got this here on segment 12. We've got our best lap time happened to be a 4.58, but that 4.50 was 0.086 faster, right? So down in the bottom, it's the exact same information. It's just zeroing on your best lap and then telling you if it was plus or minus from your best lap. So some people like to see this style, whatever works for you there, and other people like to see the raw number and do the math in your head or look at it in different ways. So that whole bottom half of this, that's what that really is, all the way down to even the lap times. We've zeroed out the fastest lap time, and then you've got your pluses. In this case, they're all going to be plus because the fastest, but all of these are how much faster, how much slower you were lap time wise compared to the base. Okay, perfect. And then one of my favorite parts of this report, one of the things I always went and looked at first, is this statistical information here in green. If you look at this column of data, what these green values are giving you is a couple of things. The first one is the minimum value. It's showing the 2.56. It's showing you the maximum value of this entire line of data, 2.8877. And then it averages them for you, puts them together for you. And then it gives you a standard deviation for this column of data. Now, it's a bit beyond what we should be talking about in a webinar, but the standard deviation is basically a representation of a mathematical representation of your consistency. And the way I use this a lot, this is one of the first things I scan when I look at a split report personally, if I'm trying for driver improvement and some other things, car improvement, is I look at this, and if it's a 0.0 something, what you're seeing there is 0.000 would be perfect. So as close as you can get, the smaller the number, the better. And if you just scan across these, you will start to see that here's a 24 versus an 09. So the 24, an 05, an 05, and you scan across all these, and you look for the biggest ones. There's a 13. Anything with a 0.0 something typically is fairly consistent in my experience. And so you're kind of scanning across here. Do you find that there are two columns here? This is first segment, that there is a large standard deviation, and then we've got one a little bit farther into the lap, this 0.138, this green segment right here. You could bring up the map, you figure out where those are, go into the data and figure them out, and of course you can always just look at these numbers. And that 247, if you look at this, what is the reason why that was so big, right? We've got 87, 87, 86, 87, 86, and an 89 and so forth. But that 9.4 right there is a pretty darn big number. That is what's basically throwing this 0.247 and making it such a large number, right? So it was the first lap of the race. Maybe turn one was cold tires, in traffic, whatever it happens to be. You can kind of, I always follow this process of what happened, where did it happen, or why did it happen. So the first thing is figure out what happened. Okay, where did it happen? We know the segment and why. You can go back and look at the data, but it's on split reports early on, cold tires, a lot of traffic. We can almost always see some long segments up here. Let's go look at that other longer one and let's see where the number was there. So the 138, if you look at this, the best was a 12.3, right? And then if we look down here, there's a 12.8 in here somewhere, and it's right here, right? So that one there, I don't know why, but all of a sudden it's about a half a second slower than his best, and it's on lap 9. So what we'd do is go into the data and see what happened on lap 9 in this area. Okay, that's what I kind of like about the split report, and then those min, max, and average and standard deviation values add a lot of power to these things for me. So, okay, there's a couple of other things that are in this report that I like to look at as well. There is some different ways of showing the data. There's histograms across the top of each one of these, and if we wanted to see that one that had a large difference, if we just click on the histogram button, what it does is it takes that data and gives you a visual of the same exact thing. It shows you where the fastest one was, and it shows you which one was of course the bigger bar is the longer segment time, right? So we can see a visual that 9.4 is quite a bit longer, obviously, as well. Okay, so these histogram buttons, you can take a look at each one. We can do the 138 one as well, and it comes up and shows you which one was the long one. So those histograms work all the way along as well. I just click on them again to bring them back down. Okay, the The other thing that's kind of interesting here is the ability to go into the settings for this particular dialog box. And we have a couple of options here. I by far, and of all the people I run into using split reports, they look at them in the way that we just did. But there are a couple of other ways to look at them. Number one is you can do a cumulative instead of a differences on the logic, right? So right now, each one of these segments has the actual segment time. And if I were to click on cumulative and then apply an exit, you'll see the report will regenerate itself. And what you're going to see now is all, and for me, this complicates it a little bit, but some people love to see that, you know, looking at it this way. I've talked to a couple people. You have the time you were in the first split, and then the second split time, the second segment here, this blue one, it's showing the time you were in that split plus the first one. So this 12.3 obviously is being stacked up. And then the third one is cumulative of the entire lap up to that spot and the time that you finished that segment, and then so forth and all the way across. You can see the numbers just getting larger and larger as we go across. To me, that is, I have to almost look at it a little bit harder and do some math. But I did want to show you what the, let me bring the settings box back up. I did want to show you what the difference there is between cumulative and differences. I'm a big fan of the differences, but go ahead and play with it when we finish the webinar, and you can kind of start to play with that. I'm gonna apply that and have that regenerate. And then the last one I want to show here, as far as the just different ways of seeing the actual report itself, is this graphical. We can take a look at the graphical way of looking at this. So I'm just going to press that button and apply and look at this. Let me pull this out of the way. In fact, let me exit out of that. What you have now is you have each of the different segments, and this one, again, for me, is not as powerful as it needs to be. But you see the first segment, not as powerful as the actual numbers to me. And then you can hover over and click, and you can see what segment, you know, what the lap time was and how much time you were spending in that segment. If we open a second lap, this one becomes even a little bit, maybe a little bit easier to understand. Now we're looking at 2 different laps, and then we can just open up multiple laps. And it starts to stack the fastest ones or the closest ones to you, and then you can barely see in here, but you know, because the segment times are fairly close. This one here has a pretty big difference. You can see the blue, then the purple one right behind it, and then the yellow lap is the longest time back there. So you can actually build these into kind of like a little bit of a histogram thing. And then when you hover over individual, I'm going to hover over this one way down here, and then up above you can see the best split versus the other ones. Boy, that yellow is a horrible color for this, isn't it? I can change. It's taking the color of the global color for the lap, so hard to see. But it's telling you what the best split time and the difference between each one as you hover over them. So again, this one, the option of looking at these graphically is not super popular with most people, but just wanted you to know that it's there. We can actually change that here in the settings box, or there's an icon when your split report is the main window in your page, the active window inside of Ray Studio. You have some different icons up here. So I've got it on graphical now. We could click it back to the numerical as well. But I'm going to click on that right there. I'm going to apply an exit. Have that regenerate real quickly. Pardon me. Okay. And there's one more little thing I just wanted to show everybody as soon as this gets regenerated. The option, what we're looking at here is these are the default colors. So your best lap is always highlighted in red, and in red over here. Your highlights are in your best rolling lap is always in yellow. All your statistical information is in green. Those are things that I've had a couple of users over the years that have come up and told me, you know, all that's fine, but I'm, you know, I have some level of, you know, green-red color blindness at some point, right? So if you want to change some of these colors, I'm going to go ahead and bring that panel back up, and let's say your best your best lap. We've got this formatting box right here. It's red right now. That's what's showing the best lap. And let's say you want to change that to, I'm going to change it to green. Green is fast, right? And so if I click on that, that's fine. And let's say your best splits here, right now they're in blue. If you wanted to change that, you could come in and change those to bright red if you want. There's options for you. And the statistics down here are in green, and we could do those if maybe you can't see green real well, or you just want to be something somewhat different. Once I change all of those, I can apply and exit that, and then that will begin to regenerate itself. And you'll see that all of those settings end up being different colors, right? So I see does saving, I see a question over there. Does saving a profile remember all these settings? It does, actually. I can set them that way. If you do a user profile and you have all your colors set one way, or your settings to be graphical or cumulative or whatever, and you use a user profile, and we're gonna create one in a minute, those colors will hold when you actually load that profile. And you could load a profile with cumulative, and then you can do one with numerical or graphical or with different colors, and you can save those as you do them, and it will hold those colors. Profiles are extremely powerful. Almost everything, there's 4 or 5 things they do not hold, and one of them, by the way, is one of the next steps we're going to do after we're going to go out to another poll here in just a moment, and I had left that going the entire time. The next thing that we're going to talk about is a poll on experience level, and I'll chat about let's launch that one and see if it takes. There we go. This is experience level. If you have a chance, give me an idea. It's not. Let me restart that, and let's relaunch that polling. Yep. Now that you should see that poll now. There you go. One of the couple things that are not held by user profiles is when you press your space bar and you have this bar, your measures and laps toolbar showing or not showing. That's not remembered by user profiles. And the other one that is that I always kind of hoped it would be is if I were to change maps, which we're about to do, load a map for, kind of like this main one, and then maybe I'm going to show you a couple of the maps we're going to, and then look at them in a split report. Maybe I have a braking area only for map that I've created, and I want to see the split times that the driver is hard on the brakes. Maybe we've changed brake pads or something. Another great way of using split reports is to build segments in your maps that are just the hard braking, straight line braking, if that's what you're after, and then look at the amount of time change after a brake pad change or a driving technique change or something like that. So those attached maps are not stored as part of your profile. So I can't build a braking split report. What I need to do is load the map, and then I can bring up the split report, reload it, the new map, and it will regenerate on the fly, but it doesn't remember which map's attached. So other than that, profiles remember virtually everything. So perfect. I see that most of you have answered that question. Thank you very much. The experience level is a big part of all these questions, by the way, are being rolled into building a calendar of what topics we're going to talk about. So that's one of the biggest reasons we want to do these polls, is to continue to grab information, all anonymous, by the way, and helping us generate topics for the webinars. Okay, I'm going to end that polling this time instead of leaving it in your way the entire time. Okay, and let's do this. Okay, so I've got this split report that's up here, but let's say I want to do that braking type of a thing, look at just the braking zones. If I were to come back up here to the map pull down, go to my map manager. If you haven't already stored one, you'd go to map and build a new one. But map manager, I happen to have one here that I've built, and you can see by the map that it's all these little red segments are the actual braking zones. We'll talk more about how to do that in a future webinar on track map building. But you can see by the where these reds are that those are braking zones. So I'm going to load that for this open test, and what's going to happen is it will regenerate this this panel here, the split report, and now I can look at all the green segments. Kind of looks a little Christmassy, right? But I can look at all these, the red segments are when he's on the brakes, and the green segments were the areas in between. And let me bring up the track map just so we can see it. And I'll look at it in a couple different ways here, but here's the track map. All these red segments are places where he was on the brakes hard. There are some other places he hitting the brakes, but I really wanted to know when the driver was fully applying the brakes, right? Let me bring up the measures graph so you can see that. Let's get this out of the way. These shaded areas from your colored bar across the top of the map you have loaded is the area that we're testing. And you can see that where I built this track map was right here where it was the larger braking zones. And I always do it just a little past where you're on the brakes, so we make sure that driver is fully on the brakes before we start counting the time. And we always try to end them before the end of the braking area. So then when we come back into the split report and we start comparing driver A versus driver B, how much time they're spending in braking zones, or brake pad A versus brake pad B, or brake bias changes or settings, or new tires versus old, whatever it happens to be, whatever is affecting your braking. Now we can come in here with this track map that we've loaded in a split report, and we can look at the time compare bar in the measures graph. But boy, this is just hard numbers of how long you were in that braking zone to pull that speed out of the car, which is kind of handy. Okay, so that just another way of looking at the braking areas, and using a split report to build something that is of value to you, right? Okay, so there you go. Let's do another quick poll while I'm going to change maps again once we start the poll, and I'm going to change to another one which I call on Autobahn a flow map. When you drive tracks, let me launch this polling, see if it's make sure it's going to take the see if you guys see that there. There we go. I see a couple people. There we go. Okay, it must be there. I'm going to go ahead and load a new map, and Map Manager, while you're doing that poll, I'm going to load this one. I'm just calling flow, right? I'm going to load that. I'm going to load for open tests, and that'll go away. I'm going to bring up the measures graphs just so we can see it a little bit, and then open. Let's get rid of a couple of these laps just for fun. And then I'll open up a track map in the background while you guys are doing that poll. And then when you guys get done with that, we'll close that out and we'll continue on. I appreciate one of the questions we've had a lot lately is hey, would you do, when are you going to do some race, some webinars that are focused on this type of racing? So we thought we'd add this poll here as well and give us an idea of what kind of racing folks are, what form of motorsports, mainly your main one. Some of you race in different forms, but what is the main one that you guys do? And then we'll kind of, maybe build the webinars around those, plus some of the other ones, obviously, occasionally as well. So perfect. I appreciate that. About the same number of people who voted on that. We're about over a minute into that. So I'm going to end that polling, and I'm going to share the results of that one if you want to take a look at it. That's kind of the numbers, what they looked like. So pretty strong, heavy auto racing, which for the most part is going to be what we might call sports cars or something like that. We've got we could have some oval stuff for the auto racing, and we had kart racing ovals, and then we have other down there, and only 1% were others, so maybe we hit our topics about right. So if you're one of the others, go ahead and throw something up into the chat, and of what your other was. That will make sure we'll continue to fine tune those and make sure we're covering everybody that's here. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing those results, and let's jump the rest of the way back into let's jump back into the rest of the way on this particular topic. Let me bring up the track map. This is just another track map that I've built. This is the way I use split reports. Split reports are not a one-time thing for me. If I'm using them deeply and really want to get some good data out of them, I build several maps like this and then look at the data, right? And I call this more or less a flow map. Where you as a driver, you head out onto the track and you're making your laps. There are spots on the track that you go through segments of driving the track, and you never get to relax. Even though it's a right-hand, left-hander, a short straightaway in between, you run those particular segments as segments, right? As larger pieces of data of driving that you flow through, and one corner affects the next one. And basically, I run these segments that same way. Get to the point where finally you've opened up your hands and you're kind of going through an acceleration zone. And I like to build some segments that kind of fit the way you drive a particular track, right? And then start to look at it. Another option, and we're going to look at the split report data in just a second. Another option sometimes is maybe the track you're running gives you everybody's split times at 3 or 4 places on the track. They've got buried loops at different spots on the track. Try to get an idea of where those are. You can build some maps, and then you can generate some information about your times based on those segments that you're getting from the promoters of the tracks, and seeing on your timing sheets of what everybody else is doing as well. So you can study certain segments that way a little bit better, which is kind of handy. But in this case, this is what I like to call a segment report, based on just the flow of the track. So let me bring up the split report for this one. And now you're looking at how much time you spent from the start line through turn 1 and through turn 2 and then turn 3, getting over to this little straightaway section over here. You really do drive that one, pretty much in that different way. That's how much time the driver had spent in all of those, along with the best, and all the different min, max, averages, and standard deviations. And then the next segment, and then the next segment, and so forth. So what I guess I'm saying is segment reports are powerful and give you some pretty cool numbers, but make sure that you are looking at them. Maybe build a couple different track maps. If you go to a single track a lot, like maybe Autobahn, like this one here. I have these maps that are already built. Let me pull this over a little bit. We have these maps that are already built. I have my main one, which is kind of the way AIM will break up your track if you want to. I've got one that's just for braking, and I have one that's that flow. And you can load them for these tests very, very easily, very, very quickly with the options that we have here in the mapping side. So, okay, take a look at some of those, and just think about split reports and maybe in a deeper way that way, which is kind of handy. Okay, perfect. What I'd like to do now is start the process. If you haven't asked your question yet, we're gonna open it up for questions and answers here that maybe are more directly related to what we're talking about here. If there's something I can demonstrate a little bit better, I'll lean on Cameron and Robbie and see if there's anything there as I kind of get my screen set up here. Let me close that down. Is there any questions that Robbie or Cameron that we might have had that I can demonstrate here? Or have I covered them all?
I think you've been doing a pretty good job. As they come in, it's like the next topic that you're discussing. So
perfect. All right.
It's been quite easy. Let's see, get one that we've already answered.
How do you load a map is one that I'll cover that one while you're kind of looking at. How do you load the map? It's as easy as coming up to map and map pull down menu, map manager, and highlight the one you want. I'll change this one to braking, and load for open tests. The button that's right here on the top. Pick whatever track map you would wish, and then of course it does load it, and it takes a little while for it to regenerate, because all of this is being done in real time. I've still got all those old colors that I did, so I can change that back too. But kind of an interesting way of looking at it. So that's how you load them up. Would a different car want a different, or would a different car want to create a different map? But there is a lot of truth to that. One of the questions I got via email since Tuesday's session is this particular user uses a motorcycle, and motorcycles probably would generate a different line and different braking spots and those kind of things, obviously. So we can't just take this track map, which I can open up map, and I can go to the map manager, and we can export a map. I could, if somebody called me and asked me, I could take that braking map that I've got. I could export that. It's a tiny little .mp file. It goes into a single folder inside of your Race Studio analysis folder structure. And you could put that in there by coming in after I emailed it to you to import existing map file. The trouble is it might not work for you as well as it does for me. Maybe your start finish line was slightly different. Maybe the vehicle you're using has a different braking point, right? Those kind of things. So different vehicles will create different driving styles, and different expertise levels. If you're as you get better and better, you're shortening up those braking zones. You would probably want a different braking map. So it really is better if you build your own. And again, we're going to have topics in future webinars where we talk about track map building to make that a little bit clearer as well. Okay. Anything else you see jump out at you, Robbie?
I saw one. It's
Okay.
a good question. So, is it possible to calculate columns? So, like what we have pulled up right now. So, total time on braking.
Okay. Here, perfect timing. The last thing I did want to cover before we start to wrap this up was you can take whatever in the split report function right here. We do not have that ability. Okay, so the question is yes, I can look at that. I can give you the min, max, and the average, but there's not an addition, added up version, right? But if you want to come into this export to Excel button, we can come up here and it opens up a save to box, drive to wherever you want to. I've already built one, not of this particular one, but I built one of when I had 2 tests open. In fact, let me just do it real quickly so you see what it looks like before I do the. This question came up last time. I'm going to open up a second test and show you what the split report would look like with qualifying and now the race opened up. And so let's go back into the split report. We always have these tabs up in AIM software, and then I'll get to the answer in the Excel spreadsheet in a second. Here's the qualifying split report. There's only a couple of laps. And then here was the final that we've been looking at the entire time that has the 8 or 10 laps of the final race. And then we always have a little button over here on the left. Anytime you have multiple sessions open, whether it's you and a teammate, or you're qualifying versus your race, or you're qualifying from last time versus qualifying in this event, you always have this test compare tab. That test compare tab then regenerates the split report and puts it in an area where you have the upper, the upper one is the race itself. This one down here is the qualifying. And if we open this up a little bit, you can see the actual title, but just by number of laps, I can tell the upper one is the race, the lower one is qualifying. What it does though, is it doesn't do a best rolling time, the yellow highlighted one we talked about, but it does highlight your best segments of both sessions put together. So you can see here that there were some best sessions in the sections in the qualifying session and some in the final, and then it puts those together for a best overall. And that's got the best rolling lap from each one, just not highlighted yellow. So the best rolling lap from the race was a 239.9 and 240.4 in qualifying. So it does show you the best rolling, but not highlighted. So let's say that is a value, that is a form, that data right there you would like to be able to do some math on, and maybe you understand Excel well. We could do that export, and then I'm going to share a file that is, and it's not this exact one. I had a different track map that was loaded, but there is what the Excel spreadsheet would look like when you get it out of. Everybody seeing that? I'm not sure, 100% sure. Everybody?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I have it on a different monitor. That is the Excel spreadsheet and what it looked like after you export it out, open it up, and now you've got all those same values, and you could come in at that point and do add a row and do some additions and averaging and anything that you might want to do, and get the total distance in braking, and from the segments that we had. So you have those options there. Okay. So we do, and virtually all, certainly most of your different functions in the AIM Race Studio software will have an icon up here that shows an Excel icon, and you can click on that almost at any time and output tons and tons of different information from the software. So you always have that available to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions that are out there?
Yeah.
Looks like we've got a couple here.
Okay.
Alan has
Robbie first.
a good question. And there's a lot of confusion about the GPS map versus the track map itself, and how they aren't linked together. But his question is the best way to match them as close as possible, or does it matter? I guess I just wanted to address that the track map is actually designed from when we have GPS data, the track image used to create the track map comes from the GPS data. So they are going to look incredibly similar because we pull the image from the GPS data directly.
Yeah, we're going to do it. I have it on my schedule to do an entire webinar on track maps inside of the AIM, world, right? So we have track maps that are this track map that we've been talking about today, the segmented track map that we build. We have our GPS map that we're looking at here on the left part of our screen, and then of course we have the track maps that are in our map database that you're uploading onto your SmartyCams and your AIM devices for the start-finish lines or the graphics in the SmartyCam. There are differences between all three of those, and you might want to understand them. So we'll do a webinar on that. If not, go onto the YouTube site. It's a little outside of how deeply we can go here, but I've done an entire YouTube video on that particular topic, what all these different track maps are and what they mean and how they're used. So if you can't wait for a webinar topic on it, go onto the YouTube site, just do a search for track maps, and you're going to see one that says, explaining track maps in Race Studio, and that will probably help you out on that as well.
When do you expect the webinar for creating the maps?
It's I don't have the list here, but it will probably be, I think we're pretty much tied together for all of April and most of May. So probably in the mid-May to into June. So it's a little while out. We've got some pretty good topics based on what the users have asked for already scheduled out and different co-hosts. So if everybody thinks that that's a stronger one, we certainly can move it ahead. But for those of you that are really in need of that, go to YouTube and watch that video. I think that will help you until we can do it where we're doing it live and chatting back and forth about the differences.
And Robbie, if you have the YouTube channel open right now, maybe
yeah,
throw that in the chat.
Robbie,
I did, actually.
Oh, perfect.
There you go. I forgot about that option. Robbie has thrown up the video in the chat. Go ahead. Oh, he did the link directly to the YouTube. If you have a chance, Robbie, find that particular one. You can even link it directly there if you want to. No pressure, Robbie, right? So that's okay. While we're anything else, Cameron, that you see that a question that we might want to answer here today?
I mean, it really looks like there's a lot of things based around the track map. It sounds like that's very popular.
Okay.
So maybe that should be closer to the next video or webinar that we do.
We certainly can slide that up. I do see that now that I'm looking at it as well.
So
yeah. Okay. And you're going to have a minute. In fact, I'm going to launch it right now while we're doing that. There's a poll. Let's see if it launches well. Every once in a while they don't launch so well. You're going to see a poll coming up here in a moment. It didn't go. Let me end it and let me relaunch it. And continue. Webinar topics, future webinar topics. If track maps is one of the ones on there. If doesn't, I see. Are you guys seeing that, Cameron?
It's up.
Okay, gotcha. It was a little slow and taken off. I see lots of votes coming in now. Track maps is one of the things that's in there. So if it's important to you, please let us know in that way, and we do certainly adjust based on that. So okay, I'm gonna reshare this topic here. We're going to go ahead and start to wind down. You guys continue to answer on that for just a little bit. Let me go through a couple of slides as we wind up. A couple of things. There's additional training and support. Obviously we're going to be doing these webinars. We appreciate all of you guys out there using our equipment and being here and just so enthusiastic about learning and getting even more value out of them. So training and support is something that's just super important to us. Like I always say during these, we're a customer support company that happens to sell racing electronics, and gosh, we're going to be here doing these webinars two a week for as far as forward as what we can see. And even when this ends, we're going to probably continue them. Maybe we'll make them to maybe we'll put them to a more of an evening thing rather than the day, but we may not. We'll see what you guys think at that point, and of course continue to put them up on YouTube. So if the webinars are a big part of this, and of course our wonderful staff of guys that are just heading out to the track, they're out there almost every weekend somewhere with our sprinter vans and wandering around talking with people and supporting all of you guys using the products. If you see it as a track, great. If not, give us a holler at the 800 number, 718-9090. talk to the text there, and we can answer a lot of questions at that point as well. So do that. Here is the YouTube page. Robbie's linked it, of course, in the notes, but in the chat. But here's the link if you missed it in the chat. Tons and tons of videos up there covering split reports as one of the topics that we've already covered a little bit, but we went into more detail here. And currently over 60 videos out there. We're just now working on putting them into different folders and different playlists, and getting things going. And of course, the 2 new webinars every week are being added that we're recording here. So keep that in mind. Visit there often. There's just a ton of information there for you. Okay, and let's talk about what our next webinar topic is before we call it a day. I'm going to go ahead and end that polling so it gets it out of your way. Okay, and let me share that with you if anybody wants to see kind of what that looked like. Because of all the discussion, we track maps, that is larger than it has been in other ones. So I'm glad to see that everybody voted with their mouse there. So we're continuing to look at this and use it to generate topics for upcoming webinars, and we will adjust. Okay, and so let's stop here. One of the questions as part of the data analysis one that we've been looking at is what we're going to talk about on Tuesday, April 14th at the same time, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about data analysis and the time compare bar, and just different ways of using that time compare bar down here at the bottom, of ways of using that in stronger and better ways, and making your data analysis happen quicker and easier. We're gonna have our first co-host that's gonna come in and do a good chunk of the presentation, and that's going to be James Clay from Bimmer World. He does a ton of coaching, and obviously is a name dealer and a very well respected racer on his own right. And he's going to come in. He's going to be one of the first of maybe 6 or 7 people you're going to see here in the next month or two that are going to come in and chat with us about different ways that they use AIM software and hardware for helping people that they work with. So next Tuesday, make sure you drop on by and listen to James and myself, and of course all the rest of the guys, and we're going to chat about the time compare bar inside of Race Studio 2 analysis. Okay. Anything in closing that you guys have that you'd want to add as we're going about ready to call it a day?
I'd just like to say thanks for everyone that stops by and hangs out with us every Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has been eye-opening the amount of the response that we've gotten from our users and customers. So we're here for you guys. So just let us know if there's anything else we can do.
Cameron, you have anything to add to?
Yeah, it's been great. It's definitely something to look forward to, like Robbie said, every Tuesday and Thursday. Looking forward to continue doing it. Sorry sometimes you can't type fast enough to get up to all the questions, but we're doing our best. And like I said, we're still answering the phones and everything like that. So if you guys have any questions that we didn't answer, give us a call, or everybody has our email. So just shoot us over an email. We can get you taken care of.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for attending. See you again on Tuesday the 14th with James Clay talking about time compare bar, and we'll see you then.